Okay, good evening everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. We hope that everyone had a nice family-oriented Thanksgiving meal. We certainly did, and we played Catan last night, which is a fun game, and chess. We played a lot of chess. Tonight's show is not going to be too crazy long, I don't think. I'm making fresh prepared horseradish root. I have it right here. Shannon is making a couple of cocktails using a lot of different ingredients. Most of the stuff you will all have at home. So I'm going to get started on what I have. I actually had a lot more of this, but we used it since we bought it the other day. And what I did is I took my potato peeler, I peeled everything off of it on the skin.
What is that?
Sorry, getting ahead of myself. This is a horseradish root, and typically they're a lot longer, a lot bigger, and this one was about this long, and we actually used a lot of it Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday. So what you do is you buy your horseradish root. I actually got this at Star Market in Marshfield. A lot of times you can get it at Whole Foods. Stop and Shop is hit and miss. I don't know about Roach Brothers. I haven't looked for it there. So this is a super simple, easy recipe to make. It's horseradish root, vinegar, sugar, and salt. And then I'm going to hit it in the Vitamix. So what I did is I peeled this out. I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to just cut it into some small little chunks. Hopefully you guys can see this here.
Yep, I can.
You can definitely smell the essence of the horseradish root. And we love it. We eat it on a lot of stuff. We honestly do. And what was nice about having this root like this is you could just take your potato peeler, get a little bit of the skin off, and then just hit it with a cheese grater and sprinkle that over steak, roast pork. Actually, it's very good on fish, things of that nature. So, take my Vitamix thing. I am not making this exactly to the recipe, only because I don't have a full cup of horseradish root, but I'm pretty close to it. So then it is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This is an 1/8, that's why I'm doing that. It is approximately 2 teaspoons of sugar. And 3/4 of a cup of white vinegar. That's probably about 3/4 of a cup. So it's going to get a little noisy here. I'm going to put it down under the Vitamix. Just a couple little pieces left here, but if you look at this, this is the exact consistency that you would get from the store. And
It's fine.
And there you have it. That should be pretty good. Put it into a jar or container. I would recommend using glass over plastic or anything of that nature. We try not to store much of anything in plastic. I have to tell you, once you add in the sugar and the vinegar, It's very strong. Let me tell you, I'm tearing up over here. It really is. It's amazingly good. I cannot tell you how good this is. I gave this to my neighbors, and he was just like, oh my gosh, that is so good. And then I gave some to some friends, Chris and Sue, and they both commented on how good this was. So this took about 5 minutes. It's really quick and easy. I cannot tell you how good this is. It's hot, it's spicy, and it's much better than anything you'll get at the store. I promise you. And it clears your sinuses right up.
You can keep it open because I'll use
Oh,
it.
Shannon's actually going to use some of this. So, anyway, just give me a second. I'm going to move a couple things out of here. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend. And I'm turning it over to Shannon, and she's going to mix up a couple of cocktails for you guys.
Well, happy Thanksgiving. Well, what we thought we would do is experiment with, since Mike was making the fresh horseradish, Max and I were talking, and we thought we would experiment with some horseradish things. And I'd say, I don't know if this week was really the most successful experimentation. So the first thing that we did was we infused gin and black pepper with the horseradish, and we did this. We literally let this sit for 48 hours, and we put way too much horseradish in it or something. This is like jet fuel. So I'm going to use a little bit of this horseradish infused gin in a dirty martini, which was the recipe Max wanted to have, but this one turned out very strong. We're going to have to do that. But I was going to spend a little bit time talking about martinis, and then we also used the horseradish to make a fresh Bloody Mary mix, and this Bloody Mary mix actually turned out really good, so I'll talk about that too. But basically, I'm going to start with the martini. Martinis are really a drink that you can either use vodka or gin in your martini, depending on what your preference is. And it's really 2.5 ounces of the liquor, and then depending on how you like it or what your flavor preference is, it can be dirty. And so the one we're making with the horseradish is a dirty martini, and there's actually 2 different ways you can make it dirty. Really, dirty just means you're adding a brined liquid to the cocktail. And so this recipe actually called for pickle juice with the horseradish, or you can just use olive brine. But we're going to use, for this dirty martini, we are going to use the the pickle brine. The other thing that is the garnish for a martini. If you put an pickled onion in your martini, it's actually called a Gibson. So that's really the only difference between a dirty martini and a Gibson or just even a straight martini and a Gibson is the olive. A basic regular martini has vermouth in it, and depending on the preference and how much vermouth is in the cocktail, that's where you'll hear, I want a dry cocktail, a dry martini. A dry martini has very little vermouth in it. A wet martini will have more vermouth. A perfect martini is kind of right in the middle with the vermouth. So I'm actually going to start. I'm going to make 2 different versions of this cocktail. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to reduce the this. I am only going to put 1/4 ounce of this in, so there's going to be 2.5 ounces of the liquor, but I'm only using 1/4 ounce of the horseradish, because that is really spicy. The way we turned out is really spicy. So then, whoops, if I had the lid off. So I'm getting 2.5 ounces of, so now that's a half, doing 2 ounces more of the gin, because we like gin martinis. And I'm saving the, and then I am going to make this other martini a perfect martini. So I'm just going to put the half an ounce of the dry vermouth. This dirty martini calls for 1 ounce of the pickle juice. So I'm going to put an ounce of the pickle. So these are both stirred cocktails. So I'm just gonna stir them up. I should have done the dry one first. These are we're gonna serve in martini glasses that are already chilled. Now I actually don't have martini glasses on the stems because they would always fall over and break. So I bought these stemless martini glasses, and you can use them for a couple different options. So we'll have Max come in a minute to try. Now the horseradish martini actually takes a small pickle as a garnish, and then I love olives, so I'm putting 3 olives in the perfect martini. So those are the 2 martinis, and now I'm going to move on to the Bloody Mary. So this Bloody Mary mix, basically we started with an organic tomato juice. An organic tomato juice that was really just tomatoes and maybe a little sea salt. So it's not overly spiced. It's not overly salty. So you want to make sure when you start with a good base. We took 3 nice size celery stalks with the leaves on, to a 32-ounce jar of tomato juice. Then we added 1 teaspoon of finely grated onion, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of Tabasco, a couple pinches of kosher salt, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of soy sauce to give it the flavor. I did not put any Tabasco in the base sauce because a lot of people don't like overly spiced Bloody Marys, and I find that you can add at the guest's request. When you're making the Bloody Mary, you can add that. So this is a new spice that we found, this tahini. There's a margarita recipe that calls for this. This is a really lemony chili sauce, chili spice that I find goes very well in the Bloody Mary. So the way I'm going to make the Bloody Mary is I'm just making this in an old-fashioned glass. So I'm going to fill it with ice. And then I'm going to put 2 ounces of vodka just right into the glass. And then I'm going to do 3 ounces of and then this also has the horseradish in it. I forgot to mention 2 teaspoons of the horseradish. This is actually lightly horseradish, so if you want to add more, we can also adjust the taste there. So I'm going to add 3 ounces of the juice, and I'm just going to give this a quick. I'm going to put a couple dashes of celery bitter, which I should also put into that cocktail as well. I'll do that now. And if you like a little chipotle spice, which I do, I'm going to spice that up a little bit, and I'm going to put some of the tahini spice in there, and then I'm just going to give this what's called a box shake, which is just really just mixing it back and forth a couple times. Now, if I had celery, we use all of our celery up for Thanksgiving, and didn't go out and get more, but this, the traditional celery garnish. You can also add one of your your olives or your onions, and then this is the Bloody Mary. So you want to come over, baby? We can. Oh, and then you actually want to take a little sprinkle of the black pepper, put that on top. And if you wanted to add more horseradish, you could. So those are our 3 cocktails. Mike, which one would you like to try?
I don't care.
Why don't you want to do the regular martini?
Sure.
Okay, why don't you come over on camera? Okay, so I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. I know we did. We feel very fortunate to have both of our boys home, and we had an excellent meal. And cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Love you.
Love you. Have a great rest of the weekend, everyone. Stay safe.
That turned out much better than the previous ones. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. That's very good.